I want to welcome everyone to the afternoon session today. We'll be getting started in just a second. Real quickly, I'll introduce myself. I'm today's facilitator. My name is Brock Klein. I'm with Nabholz Construction, and I've known Dr. Loretta McGregor for about 5 years now, and I consider her one of my good friends. So to introduce her, Loretta Neal McGregor is the department chairperson and professor of psychology and counseling at Arkansas State University in Jonesboro. She has served as chairperson at ASU for the past 8 years and has taught in higher education for 25 years. She started when she was about 4, so just so everybody knows. She's a native of Hope, Arkansas. Her professional involvements include a membership in the American Psychological Association, where she's a member of Division II, the teaching of psychology. In STP, she served as the Associate Director of Society Programming for the APA Convention and on various committees. Dr. McGregor received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Ouachita Baptist University in Arkadelphia, where she double majored in psychology and sociology. She completed a Master of Science in General Experimental Psychology at Emporia State University and her PhD in Human Factors Psychology at Wichita State University. She and I actually graduated from Leadership Jonesboro together in 2010. She is a member of the Jonesboro Chamber, and she is also a member of the Executive Board of the Rotary Club of Jonesboro. So let's welcome Dr. McGregor.
Good afternoon. So can you hear me in the back? Is it too loud? Okay. I don't want to, give anybody a headache by the time they leave, because I have a teacher voice, and when I turn it on, it's really on. First, I am going to tell you that I am not going to use the podium. I tend to roam, so I apologize to the cameraman right now. Good luck. And I also want to thank my friend Brock for the wonderful introduction, and I would also like to thank the organization for inviting me to speak. I was very excited when I got the invitation, and I was like, wow, I get to hang out with a group of really professional and prominent women all day. And when you work in higher education, even though over 60% of our students are females, that is not necessarily reflected in the professoriate, and it is definitely not reflected in terms of administrators. So when it comes to department chairs and deans and provosts and presidents, as you go up the ladder, you see fewer and fewer women, and it is also rare that you see women of color. In addition to that statement of working in higher education and not seeing a lot of women, one of the reasons I actually went into my field is because I did not see a lot of women. Right now, as a professor in psychology, I am a full professor because there is a hierarchy. I am among 1% of the population who is a female full professor, because most females never make it to that final rank for some reason. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. But for me, coming and doing something like this, I think is the way to help people sort of realize their full potential. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story before we get into the unanticipated consequences, and I do that because I want people to know that I did not spring from the head of Zeus full grown and as a full professor. I grew up in Hope, Arkansas. I was poor but didn't know I was poor. I had very good grandparents who did a very good job of, I think, instilling middle-class values into us and shielding us from the thought of being, being a victim. We were never allowed to have a mentality of being a victim. We were always required, and they didn't say this, but we were always required to do our best. in whatever it is we did. If we rode our bicycles, we were required to do our best in riding our bicycles. My grandparents had a 9th grade education and a 12th grade education. They never went to college. My mother never went to college. I was the first generation college student in my family. I am the oldest of 7. Of the 7 now, 6 of us have a degree of some sort. And of those 6, 3 of us have graduate degrees. One has an MBA, one has a master's in education leadership, and I have a PhD in human factor psychology. Now, human factor psychology is an area that is related to business. It is not clinical and counseling psychology, so I will not counsel or give you advice afterwards unless it's business related. Then we can talk. The topic for today, the unanticipated consequences of success for women, actually came about during my years of mentoring young women in higher education. What I found is a number of things. Number one, I found that a lot of the young women who came into higher education were very bright. They were very intelligent young women, but they had this sort of dual thinking going on that would sometimes sabotage their success. They would come to school and it would be okay for them to learn and to grow, but then they would go home and they would be challenged not only by their peers who remained home, but by their family members with comments like, "Oh, so you went to college for 1 semester and you think you know everything now." Some of you have heard that, haven't you? Yeah. "Oh, so you think you could talk to me any kind of way now just because you've gone to college for 2 years. And my favorite was, "Don't you try to use that psychology on me." I'm not even that kind of psychologist. But they had this sort of dual way of thinking. And I would try to encourage them that they really could go on and be successful and do the things they wanted to do. But then over the years, looking at my own career, I realized that there were issues that I ran into that I really wish someone would have warned me about. They were things that I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams. And all of my mentors and sponsors were men, so they could not tell me about them. Does anybody sort of relate to that? Just a little bit? There are certain things that are unique to professional women that men never think about. And even though they can mentor you and sponsor you in successful ways, they cannot tell you about some of the obstacles that you're going to face. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. I'm going to run through my slides, and then hopefully afterwards we'll have a conversation about it. But if I get to a slide and you just have this burning feeling that you've been inspired to speak, do so, because I don't mind being interrupted, okay? So off we go. Here's what we're going to talk about. These are some of the things that I found that my mentors really could not tell me about, and I had to experience them firsthand, and I had to sort of maneuver my way through. And I was fortunate enough that I had really good peers along the way that we would also discuss some of these things. Some of the female peers that I had and colleagues, we would discuss some sort of things. I am now considered a senior faculty member. Dum, dum, dum. And when we talk about it in higher education, we talk about early career, mid-career, and late career or senior. I am now a late career faculty member, and I embrace that dearly. And yes, I do ask for my discounts with my AARP card. But here are some of the unanticipated consequences, and we're going to go through them one by one. First, divorce rate. Divorce rates for professional women actually increase and are greater than the divorce rate for non-professional women. Does that make sense? Anybody want to think about why or sort of mention why? They have the ability, well, I'm going to rephrase that. Her comment was they have the ability to leave if they want to leave. I'm going to say they have the ability to take care of themselves. And sometimes that frightens husbands. They say things like, you don't need me. I actually, my husband is deceased now, but immediately after I finished my PhD, he supported me through my entire PhD, bless his heart. And 6 months after I finished my PhD, he divorced me. And he said, I couldn't figure this one out. And then he said, well, you've always gotten to do all the things you wanted to do, and you're successful now. He said, and what do I have? He was comparing his success to my success, which was interesting because I saw this as our success, not mine versus his, but ours. And so I was shocked by that. But when I started researching, I found out that that actually happens quite often. And so the numbers that I have up actually talk about graduate students. The divorce rate for women who are in graduate programs is twice the divorce rate for men, as you can see, upon entry and upon exit. So they'll either leave you in the beginning sometimes or they'll leave you in the end. You can't win sometimes. Now, don't get me wrong. Number one, I am not male bashing, okay? I also love statistics. I love teaching statistics, and I'm somewhat of a statistician. These are numbers, and the numbers in this case don't lie. Now, here's something that I want to point out about this. Again, I'm not male bashing. I simply wish people had told me this beforehand, because in those types of situations, it's not just one person. There are two people. And there are things that I did to contribute to the downfall of our marriage because I was focused on my degree. There is a possibility that I could have done some things differently. Now, I'm not quite sure what they are. Actually, I am, but we won't get into that. But do you understand what I'm saying? If I had known this beforehand, maybe he and I could have had a conversation about this. We could have addressed the issue head on, and then we may not have gotten to the point where he felt he needed to compare his success to mine. Now, I don't know if that's the truth or not, because 6 months after he divorced me, then 6 months later he passed away. But again, I wish that I had known this beforehand because we could have had a conversation about it. So I'm telling you, for those people who are in that innovator group, you've just gotten married and you think that life is blissful and everything, have this conversation. Even those of you who are in that mid group and so on, have this conversation, because if you are climbing the ladder of success, even though I'm talking about graduate school, you're still going to need to have this conversation. The value of family, okay? One of the things that I didn't think about, and fortunately there was divine inspiration on my behalf, and I didn't have to think about it, is the value of family. Families are deemed beneficial for professional men, but they're considered a hindrance for professional women sometimes. The whole idea of when you're going to have children, when you're a professional woman, you have to think about that. And men don't think about that because they don't give birth to the children. Got an amen. They help make them sometimes. Well, we've gotten to the point where we really don't need their physical presence to make the child anymore. But They don't think about how is this going to affect my career. They go to work with their cigars and they celebrate. Woo, I got a son. I got a little baby girl. And we, on the other hand, are sitting at our desk wondering, when should we tell our boss that we're pregnant? Oh my God, I've got to tell them. And you sweat for 2 weeks. And then you try to figure out, can I go until I'm showing? Can I hold out until I'm showing? And then somebody says, Maggie put on a little bit of weight there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for pointing out the fact that I put on weight. God, now I got to tell them I'm pregnant. Now, men don't have to think about that. In this survey from the Women Executive article, Women Executives, Health, Stress, and Success, in the Academy of Management Executive, Volume 4, Issue number 2 from 2000, they said that 20% of their female respondents decided not to have children, and 25% of their respondents postponed having children. Now, some of my mentors who are a little bit more senior than I am, and they helped mentor me through my progress in academia, many of them are childless because they were among the first wave of females to go into academia, and especially those women in the sciences. They do not have children because they were told in a non-specific way that if they had children, it would interfere with their ability to be a professional. I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, at that time, I think I was an assistant professor. So I had been promoted from instructor to assistant professor. I became pregnant with my second child, and a male colleague told me, point blank, he said, "You know you're not going to work like you used to." And I said, "What do you mean I'm not going to work like I used to?" "Well, you know, when you get pregnant, you just don't have that energy and you're not going to work like you used to." And I said, "Okay. I'm still going to do the work that I'm supposed to do. It's not like," and now see, here's the thing. As a female in academia, I always went above and beyond, which is expected of most of us. Most of us feel like we have to prove ourselves by going above and beyond. And so I was working like a Hebrew slave, killing myself. And I had to admit, he was exactly right. I was not going to do that anymore. I am going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to be fat and pregnant and happy. You got a problem with it? After I had my child, a couple of years later, he said, "You know, you slacked off after you had Sean." And I said, "Okay, all right, no problem." And then I found a new job. So, a survey of top executives found that 49% of women who are CEOs are married, found that 49% of women who are CEOs are married and have children compared to 84% of men. Again, almost twice as many men. Why? You guys really aren't going to talk to me? I thought the lunch was like really nice and light so you wouldn't be asleep and all that kind of stuff. Was it the card? I don't know. Exactly. Their spouses support the family because they don't have to work because they're the spouse of the CEO, so they take care of the kids, while mom, who is the CEO, has to ask her husband sometimes to babysit. Again, babysit your own children? Seriously? That's called parenting. That's what they talked about this morning. That is called parenting, not babysitting. You do not babysit. I don't babysit, so you don't get to babysit. We are going to parent together. So women have this thing where they don't have the same luxury as their male counterparts. Quite often over the years, both when I was married and when I was as a single person, I always said, "I need a wife." I need a wife. And if my wife comes in the form of a man, that's fine. I just want to call him wife. Look, wifey, I need you to go to the laundromat, pick up the laundry. I need you to pick up some groceries. And by the way, what's for dinner? I just need a wife. Men, they have that luxury of having a wife. We don't have that luxury because we are the wife and we still have to work. So, speaking of being the wife and having to work, housework. Males, on average, work 47 minutes longer every day at work. So they're almost at work an hour longer. And why are a lot of females not at work an hour longer? Yep, that's because they got to pick up the kids and go by the laundromat and decide what's for dinner. And if you're married and you ask your spouse, now not all spouses, okay, not all spouses, but a lot of spouses, if you ask them to plan dinner, it's like you've just asked them to rotate the world on its axis. Did you have a question? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you raised your hand. Oh, okay. Also, look at housework. 52 minutes per day for women, 16 minutes per day for men. That's a good one. That's looking for the remote and taking out the trash twice a week. Honey, can you take out the trash? I just took it out on Wednesday. Today's Sunday. Yeah. I don't have a spouse, but I have a 19-year-old son. And this is him, and I am trying to break him of this because I do not want his wife to be spending 52 minutes a day during work while he's sitting around looking for the remote and complaining about taking out the trash. He is not happy with me most of the time. He washes dishes. Okay, let's be honest. He puts the dishes in the dishwasher. And he leaves the pans sitting on the side of the counter because mom mysteriously washes those in the middle of the night. Okay. I have a daughter as well. My kids are 10 years apart. She is the 52-minute per day housework. Both of them work. She comes home. And she has become sort of my surrogate. She does a lot of the stuff that I used to do. And she gets so angry at her brother because of the 16 minutes. He never does anything. He doesn't want to do this. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right. But it's reality. Childcare. Again, this is from 2012. Gender divides remain in housework and childcare from U.S. News World and Report. Mothers spend on average 1.22 hours per day, almost an hour and a half, on childcare, 52 minutes for dads. So, because they babysit. The Pew Research Center did a report called Breadwinner Moms in 2013. And one of the questions they ask in their report is, it's generally better for a marriage if the husband earns more money than the wife. And what I put up is a few numbers. Number one, in 1997, 40% of the respondents overall, regardless of gender, agreed with this comment. 40%. In 2013, that number had gone down to 28%. So I think that's a good thing. Also in 2013, notice that there's very little difference between male and female respondents. 37% versus 38%. 62%, 63% disagree with this statement. They really don't think that men have to be the major breadwinner. In 2011, researchers found that wives who had more education, of the wives who had more education, 38% of those wives had higher incomes than their husbands. And that of spouses who had the same amount of education, 23% of the wives make more money than their husband. So going back to that other, it shows that there is some agreement with men and women that it's okay if the female becomes the number one breadwinner now. I think one of the best trends that I've sort of seen, and I don't know if I should say the best, one that I actually appreciate, are stay-at-home dads. Men who are willing to take the responsibility of rearing their children day in and day out and allowing their wives to be the breadwinner because they realize she's got it going on. She's going to bring home the most money and the bacon and the dry cleaning, and I just have to watch Junior here and play with him all day. Actually, they do more. But I really like seeing that type of equity. We don't have a lot of it, but I do like it when I see it. I know this is hard to see, but we're talking about men and women and their income, and people thinking, I don't know, does it help? Okay, thank you. Men and women and their income and thinking that it's okay to actually have women make more money, but in reality, look at what women make on average compared to men. For every dollar that a man makes, this shows you what a woman makes in comparison, state by state. In the state of Arkansas, for every dollar made by a man, a woman makes 77 cents. 77 cents. 79 cents in Texas, yes. I'm sorry, no. That does include women who are also in poverty, but it is primarily job for job because you do have women who are also doing some of the same low-paying jobs as men are paid. But you do also have more women who are in poverty. So when you actually combine those two, you find that women are making less money on average than men are. Thank you. Very good question. So when you talk, one of the other things that you'll find is that there are differences in the workplace regarding what's considered barriers for men and women. Women and men look at the workplace in a very different way. One of the things you'll find is that if you ask men, what are some of the barriers to women in the workplace? Notice that the men are in green. They think the primary barriers is that they haven't been working long enough. This is why they don't get promoted, or this is why they don't get certain jobs, because they haven't been working long enough. And because they haven't been working long enough, they have a lack of experience. And this is not true, because what you find in the workplace is quite often you will find women who have been working just as long as men, and they have the experience, but because of some of the other factors that they talked about this morning in another session, these women are not necessarily putting themselves forward, seeking those positions, trying to be advanced, and they still have to go by the laundromat and make something for dinner. And so because of this, they are not necessarily being advanced in the workplace, but that's not what men think about. They think about lack of experience, not in the pipeline long enough, and men tend not to think that they stereotype women and they have preconceived notions about women and work. No, women think this. 52% of women think that men stereotype them and they have preconceived notions about how they perform in the workplace. But notice, only 25% of the men, half of the number of women almost, 25% of men actually even consider that a barrier in the workplace. Men also don't think about women being excluded from informal networks, and they don't think about the work environment as being inhospitable sometimes to women. Now again, women think about that, but men don't. I think a perfect example for me of exclusion from informal work, informal networks, and I had never really thought about it before until I was in graduate school working on my PhD. When I was in graduate school and working on my PhD, I also had 2 children, I had a spouse, I had a dog and a picket fence, and I was working 2 jobs, okay? I worked as a graduate teaching assistant on campus, and I taught 2 classes, and I worked part-time at JCPenney on the weekends. Because I was married and had kids and had responsibilities, I could not take part in some of the informal activities that went on. For instance, my graduate professor would routinely invite us in the beginning out to go drink beers with him in the evening after school was over. And after declining twice, because I had other obligations, I had to go home and get the kids. After declining twice, he just stopped asking me. And he and the male students routinely went out and had beers at least once or twice a week after work. Now, he had a wife, and they had 2 kids. So guess where his kids were? They were with his wife. Now, she had an academic career, but she already completed her PhD. She was only working part-time. And so it hit me that I am being excluded from these informal networks because I have other obligations because I'm a female. And it really did affect our working relationship. It was to the point where I finally decided, I don't care if he ever likes me. He and I both have a need. My need is to finish a PhD, and his need is to have a first PhD student. And if we can meet each other's needs, that's all that matters. Okay? And that's how I dealt with it. But some of my male peers had opportunities that I did not have because I was excluded from those informal networks. Inhospitable environment and culture. The reality is some environments in which we work, especially if we work in a male-dominated field where they don't think about these kinds of things, can be very inhospitable to us. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. Microaggressions. Has anybody heard of microaggressions before? Okay, I'll give you an opportunity to read what it is. Or do I need to read it for you? I hate when people read PowerPoints for me, but if you can't read it, I'll read it. So, someone earlier today mentioned the fact that sometimes when they get up and they speak in a boardroom, that the men just kind of gloss over their conversation or their contribution and move to something else. That's a microaggression. That's a microaggression. And the interesting thing is that microaggressions really aren't always intentional. Now, they can be intentional, and in that instance, I would say they probably are intentional. But there are microaggressions that are unintentional, and that men or people in general will just say and do stupid stuff. and have no idea that they're really offending and providing hostility and negative energy to this particular group of individuals. They have no idea that they're doing this, okay? And I've decided that I've gotten to the point where I have to call people on microaggressions. When I was younger, I didn't do it. But then I decided, if I do not teach them, they will not learn. Okay. If I don't teach them, they won't learn. So here's a microaggression that I experienced. I'm walking through, and this is years later, after I had worked at JCPenney, so I knew some of the tricks. I'm walking through JCPenney. I don't have this lovely suit on that I'm wearing today. I had on a pair of my favorite jeans, a pair of tennis shoes, which I love, and a nice T-shirt. It probably said football on the front or something. So I'm walking through JCPenney with my daughter, my mini-me. And as we're walking around, I keep seeing the same guy. He's here, and then he's there, and then he's here, and then I realize he's loss prevention, and he's following me. Loss prevention is security, okay? LP is security, and they don't call them loss prevention out loud. They just say LP. LP to the front counter, please, so that people won't know. Yeah, loss prevention. So, loss prevention is following me through the store. And so I confront him. I said, "Are you following me?" "Oh, no. I'm just waiting on my wife. She's over shopping, da-da-da-da-da." They're not supposed to tell you they're following you. So I go someplace else, and he's there again. And I look up and I say, "Are you sure you're not following me? Because I'm seeing you a lot of places." No, he said, "but it's really nice to see you." Okay. So I see him one more time. I walk up to the cash register, and the young lady who's working at the cash register, and I say, "Look." I turn on my angry black woman voice then, okay? I can turn it on. I can take the PhD and the earrings off. I said, "Look." I said, "I have been all the way through this store, and loss prevention continues to follow me. You need to call up to security right now and tell them to have this man stop following me through this store, because I have a PhD and can buy anything I want in this store. Do you understand?" She said, I said, "Call now." She said, "Yes, ma'am." I stood there and waited for her. So she picked up the phone and she turned around and mumbled in it. And I said, "Thank you very much." I said, "Now today I am leaving your store because I have chosen not to spend any money here because you've accused me of wanting to take things." I said, "I will decide whether or not I will come back. Thank you. Have a good day." If we do not educate people about their microaggressions, how do we expect them to stop doing it? And if they do it to you, they will do it to someone else. Yes? So we have to teach men that when they say things to us like, "Oh, that's so sweet," that's not necessarily a compliment. That's actually being dismissive, because they wouldn't say that to a male colleague, I bet you. If a male colleague did the same thing to them, they would probably say, "Oh, thank you very much, I appreciate that." But when they tell you, "Oh, that's so sweet," they're being dismissive of you. And then you can tell them, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to be sweet, I was just trying to help you, but thank you." Because we need to educate them. They don't understand that their language and the things that they do sometimes toward us are microaggressions. Questions, comments? Yes. Dum, dum, dum. Yes. 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 You definitely have to educate them. And again, as I said, if we don't do it, no one else will. And they'll continue to make these jokes, as you said, to other people. There is another question or comment?
Hi, my name's Lee Akuch. I'm the VP of Human Resources at Ozark Mountain Poultry. I have a question about microaggressions. I believe, from research I've done, I have a master's in intercultural communication, that a lot of this deals with the PC backlash. And do you think that individuals are looking at political correctness as a loss of absolute power? Because it's not okay. God forbid we ask someone to think about what they say. Words have power. Words have influence. Do you think that we need to educate people about the fact that it's not about being PC, but it's about being aware that people are angry about the loss of absolute power and being able to think or to speak without thinking?
I do think that there is this issue of power that's intertwined with this. However, I don't necessarily think that it's related to the political correctness movement. I think this is more cultural in terms of cultural norms, and that men really do see themselves in a hierarchy when it comes to who's the best, I guess. Here's what I used to teach my students. People will not allow you to be different. They always want to put qualifiers on different. And when I say qualifiers, that means when you talk about people being different, people translate into their head, one has to be better than the other. So one is high and one is low. And that's with gender, and that's with ethnicity, and that's with anything else. People always want to rank order things in a hierarchical manner. And so I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that men really do still think that they're superior to women in a lot of ways. And I also think that part of it is geographical and where people are located. Because we have to be honest, we're in the Bible Belt area. And not only do a lot of men think that they are higher and better than women, a lot of women think that too. A lot of women think the man is better than I am because in the Bible it says he was created first. So he's got to be better. My thinking is he was created first, and then God created women because he fixed all the mistakes he made the first time with men. I always say that X and Y chromosome messes them up. God realizes, man, I shouldn't have given an X and a Y. I should have just given two X's and we would have been good. So women have two X chromosomes, we're good. We don't have any competing between the chromosomes in us, and that makes us, yeah. But men, on the other hand, that X and Y, I always joke and say that Y just really messes you guys up every time. But all jokes aside, I really do think that a lot of it is just cultural, and that men have always, historically looked at women as possessions, and we've gone away from that sort of true possession type of belief to still thinking that they're a little less than they are and that we can treat them certain ways and think that it's okay. Yes. Yes, and the comment was that we have to get out of our own heads sometimes because men think about what they think and we think about what we think, but we have to get out of our heads and we also have to think about the things that they're thinking. Now, I think, I keep saying think, I'm tired of saying think now. My perception of this is that most women really are good at not only thinking like women, but also thinking like men. I think that most women are good at doing both. In psychology, we call this code switching. Code switching means that you can not only think like people of your dominant group, but you can also think like people of other groups. Now, do not be offended when I say this, but as an African American female, and for the African American females in the audience, if you agree with this, I need an amen, okay? African American females who are successful not only learn how to think like African American females, but they learn how to think like white females, white males, and African American males. Thank you. Because we have to live in all of those worlds. And I think one of the things that my Caucasian friends, if they were really admit it, is you know how to think like a man better than a man knows how to think like a woman. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I don't like the microphone. I've always been perplexed at some of my behavior, which I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how I term it is what are their motivations, what caused them to act that way, what is their final, what is the result they desire from that. And I used to think it was wasting time, but it's not. You're right. You put a name to it, code switching. So I think that is very important to acknowledge that. But here's another question, especially regarding microaggressions. So you're in the workplace, you encounter these, other people encounter them. When is it okay to say that's not okay?
Well, I think you have to do a true assessment of your environment and how much political capital you have to expend in that environment. I think a lot of the times where we fall short is we don't know how much political capital we actually have. And we don't spend it wisely sometimes. What I mean by political capital is you, because you are a professional woman and you are here, you really are a mover and shaker in your environment in some way or another. Now that you know you have that kind of power and influence, how do you use it effectively? And when you use it effectively and help to benefit yourself and others, that's called the use of your political capital. So you have to know what your position is in the environment that you're in. You have to know your coworkers, and you have to know how much political capital you have to expend. If you do not have a lot of political capital, that's when you need to have your mentor or your sponsor go to bat for you. As a senior faculty member, I mentor a lot of the junior faculty who come in, the assistant professors who are spanking brand new out of their PhD. I tell them they still have the PhD smell on them. So they come into the university, and as my grandfather would say, they are just green as grass, all right? And I tell them, male and female alike, I say, here are some of the things that are going to happen to you. You need to learn how to say no, but you cannot say no to everyone, because there are some people you just can't say no to without causing yourself some difficulty. I said, I can say no to people you can't say no to. So if you encounter one of those situations, I need you to come to me and ask me to say no for you. So then because I have political capital, can go and spend some of that assisting this person by saying, I really don't think it's a good idea that they serve on this committee right now because I really need them to do this back in the department. Because I know how much political capital I have. And I can also correct some of my senior colleagues because, again, I am now a senior colleague. As a junior colleague, I probably couldn't have gotten away with some of the things I say to my male colleagues now. But as a senior colleague, I can say, that was really stupid, right? And get away with it. But I also do not do it in a vindictive manner. And I do try to be very, I try to be nice about it, and I try to help them by couching it in the terms that we're all lifelong learners. So you've learned something new today. Other comments? Okay. So here are some comments and other examples of microaggressions. There is this microaggression project on Tumblr, which is really interesting. So if you get a chance, you can actually go and read some of the comments, and you can also post if you're a Tumblr member. Now, if I have any Walmart executives in here, I'm going to apologize right now because I'm going to give an example, and it involves my particular experience at a Walmart store. I do not think it's representative of the corporation. So that's my disclaimer, okay? So I'm in Wally World one day, and I have on black slacks, and I have on a shirt, and it has an emblem on it that says Arkansas State University, Department of Psychology. It's a polo. So I got on my little flat shoes, my little black dress pants, my little polo shirt, and all of this is black now, mind you. Now, Walmart has instituted policies regarding what colors their employees have to wear. Does anybody know? Khaki pants and a blue top. Yeah. They provide their own clothing, but it has to be in that color scheme. Now, I'm wearing all black, except for the red emblem that says Arkansas State University, Department of Psychology and Counseling. And this lady walks up to me and she says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where to find da-da-da-da-da?" I look at her, I look at my emblem, and then I look back at her. And she says, "Oh, you don't work here, do you?" "No, ma'am." "Okay, I'm sorry." That's a form of a microaggression and a stereotype, okay? It's a stereotype. I guess I look like a Walmart employee who went to graduate school. Okay, now that's not nice. And I am a customer, mind you, especially if it's on sale. Come on. But her assumption was that I guess I should be stocking something. And that's a microaggression. Because now this woman just goes up, just makes these assumptions and go up to people. And if I were someone who their feelings were easily hurt, that really could have, I guess, damaged me somehow. And think about it, especially if it's a young girl. A young girl who is in college or a young girl who's in high school who is very smart but has self-esteem issues, and somebody comes up to her and the young woman doesn't have a really strong support system. They just assume that she should be working in Walmart, and so she's already struggling in school, and she doesn't have a support system, so maybe they're right. No, I agree.
I think the fact you had an emblem on a shirt speaks like you're somebody
But it's still an assumption on their part. Yeah, this person looks like she needs to be, never mind. So here's another example I wanted to give you. I like this one too. Yeah. Your daughter says that? So when I was married, I didn't have the braids, but I had the long, straight hair thing going on. And I got tired of it. I am one of those people that if I can't get up and get dressed in 10 to 15 minutes and be out the door, that's too much work. Okay? So I decided one day on my way home from school that I was just going to get my hair cut off. Just going to get cut. See the scalp cut. Looked like I had just gone into the military cut. Buzz cut. So I stopped by my beautician and I said, cut it off. She said, cut it off? I said, yeah, cut it all off. She said, all of it? Yes, all of it. And lo and behold, I made the mistake of not telling my husband that I was going to get my hair cut beforehand. My hair. I didn't tell my husband that I was going to cut my hair on my head attached to my body. I went home and he said, oh! I said, hey. And then, what to me was like the oddest question in the world, he said, what happened to you? And I wanted to say, I got my head stuck. And it just took all my hair away. I don't know, it was a tornado. I was living in Kansas, so I should have told him it was a tornado that came and took my hair. So, but he didn't think that I should have short hair, I guess. And for that reason, I wore it short until we divorced. And then after that, I grew it out again and got braids. My son, I told you I have a 19-year-old son. I have a 19-year-old son. He does not like the idea of me cutting my hair. I really do want to wear my hair short again, and I will. It's just a matter of time. But my son and my daughter, we don't like you with short hair, Mom. We like your hair longer. They're going to get a surprise, too, one day. Because Mommy's going to come home, and they're going to go, oh! But it's my hair. And if I want to cut it, fine. Because as she says, because I think about when cutting my hair that I'm really trying to impress a man. I think not. It's about me being convenient. Okay, so unanticipated stressors, and we'll go through these quickly. These are things, again, that people don't tell you about that we wish they would. What time do we finish it? Quarter? Okay, 5 minutes. And we've had questions in and out, so I think we're good. Tokenisms and feelings of isolation. Quite often, if you are the only woman there, you really do feel like you're the token, and you really do have a sense of isolation because there's nobody else to reach out to. This is when you have to find women in other locations to help mentor you. Here's the thing a lot of people make the mistake of when they talk about mentors, is they think that the mentor has to be local. The mentor does not have to be local. You can find someone in your field, in another city, and with all of the technology we have now, you can even see them sometimes, okay? You can FaceTime them or something and talk to them. I really think you need to have a mentor away from your workplace because that provides a safe haven for you so you don't have to really worry about what you say getting back to someone in the company. You really need that kind of support. And that goes along with the second one, lack of social support system. Because we have that feeling of isolation, we don't have a social support system. Create yourself a social support system. And you don't necessarily have to have people who are in your profession. I went to see the movie this week, Single Wives Club, okay? It's actually not bad. What I found interesting is you have these women who are very different in terms of their careers, and they form a sisterhood, a bond to support each other. We can do the same thing. Okay, look, just because I went to graduate school doesn't mean that I don't still have some of the same issues that you have. Just because I have a PhD and work at a university doesn't mean I don't have some of the same issues that you have. I take my shoes off just like you do. And you're lucky I don't have them off now. Overload. A lot of the times we get overloaded with work and home and all those kinds of things. That's when we need a support system. Gender harassment. You don't have to put up with gender harassment. That's one of the things that most of us are going to face at some point. And you don't need to let it go on without addressing it. Okay? At some point, you're going to face gender harassment if you haven't already. And even if you have, you're probably going to face it again. You need to address it, and you need to put a stop to it, because that causes more unnecessary stress for you. And then work-home conflict. We've already talked about this a little bit before. That work-home conflict, you can get a balance to it. But one of the ways to get a balance to it is you've got to learn to take some time for yourself. One of the things I found in my research is that when it comes to having relaxation time, women report that they feel more stressed during their downtime than men do, because they are worrying about all the things that they could be doing instead of relaxing. You've got to take at least 1 hour, I don't care if it's an hour a week, hour every 2 weeks, or an hour a month. You've got to do something just for you. Even if it's going out to eat by yourself, go and do it, but you've got to have some time that's just for you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to continue this race that you run and have a work and home balance. Okay, I am out of time. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
For those of you that might be married, I've always thought this was kind of a cool statement. It's not really a question or anything, but men may be the head of the family, but the women are the neck. We control which way the head turns.
There you go. I like that one too. I'm going to add that one to my XY comment. Are there other comments? Yes. I think here.
All righty. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I feel like the Verizon. Is that Verizon? Yeah. Okay. So I'm the CEO of a veterans nonprofit. I'm a combat veteran. And one of the things that I am challenged with is that I was a 50 cal gunner. I did kill a lot of people, but I saved a lot of lives. I was also a combat lifesaver. And so in my field, there's typically a lot of men who have done that and who have been in that situation, and they kind of stand in a position of leadership. They're controlling the conversation. And I always tend to struggle myself with how people see me because I am a woman. And even though I have done those things, there's still a vulnerable part of me of being a woman. And just trying to balance my comfortableness with sharing my experience, because I always think, even when I'm in a situation where you have this sisterhood bond, women tend to look at me differently when they know that that has been my experience and that is what I'm fighting for. So a lot of the conversations that I have to have, a lot of the things that I have to do are not pretty. And the things that we have to deal with when we deal with service members and their family, it's just not pretty. And so, I struggle with that. And if there's any advice that if somebody's been in a tough situation in their lifetime where they've done something like that, and I'm sure a lot of times when I'm in the room, if I say, has anybody killed a lot of people, nobody's like raising their hand. So I know.
I was going to say, do you mean in our head or in reality? Because,
No, but I mean, and that's, I mean, for a veteran, I mean, that's the reality, and
Right.
you can't deal with it until you address it. And there's sometimes I do feel like I'm in a position to be the platform and voice for people that can't say that or aren't comfortable with saying that.
Right.
But then sometimes I struggle with, I see the looks that I get and I see what happens. And as a leader of my organization, being a CEO, when I'm in the room with a lot of men, I struggle sometimes with holding back and not saying what I know to be true and what needs to be said. And so, you know, if there's any relevance and somebody could give advice to speak to that, I'd love to hear.
Well, I think this will be the last comment because we're running a little bit late here, and thank you so much for saying that. One of the things I think you need to know is that you're not alone, because most of us really do work in that environment where people look at us very like we're odd. You know, most of us, if we're honest, when we start talking about what we do and we talk about the fact that we're executives and we're professionals, they kind of look at us a little bit strange. But when you form that sisterhood, I think the first thing you need to do with whoever you form those sisterhoods with is put everything out on the table and say, we are going to have a non-judgmental sisterhood. And so whatever we talk about is between us. I've developed that with 2 colleagues at work. We get together once a month, the 2 colleagues and myself and my sister, we get together once a month. We have wine and sometimes food. And we just kind of share. And we just kind of vent. And but we know that in this sisterhood, it is a safe haven, and we are not going to judge each other. But all of us get that look at sometimes, especially when I tell people I'm a psychologist. Oh, okay, I'll see you later. I'm going to sit over here. So you're not alone in that. Thank you, guys. You have been awesome.